Hello, in today's video I'm going to be clearing out some of my backstock. I've had this figure lying around for far too long and I figured it's time now to use him. And as the rules stated for this friendly little competition that I was in, we needed to use some stuff that was in our backlog. After getting over my confusion as to the sprue to box ratio, I knew I needed to have a companion for the guy, so I got a drone and figured I could make something cool with it. I quickly went about building the drone, but figured it was a lot faster just to wave my hand across it and have it auto-assemble. The drone is going to be wrecked, so I will be destroying it in a little bit, but we need a place for that drone wreck to reside. And for that, I had many ideas running through my head, but eventually settled on the side of a desert cliff. So I blocked the rough shape out using some styrofoam, and then glued some plaster rocks for the rock faces, and used my traditional homemade sculpted mold for the ground texture. On the edge of the cliff, I wanted a gnarly looking tree coming out of it, so I used a root or small little branch that just happened to have the shape I was looking for, and embedded that into the ground texture so it would all dry together. Once the ground texture was dry enough, I used some watered down Mod Podge and applied it liberally to the surface. I did this so I could then go back and apply some dirt texture over top of the ground texture. For this, I just used Luke Talon's method, which is just dirt in a paint can lid with a stocking over it, shaked on top of that wet Mod Podge. Using some larger pebbles and rocks scavenged from my backyard, I then applied them to the still wet Mod Podge and kind of pushed them into the surface a little bit so they weren't floating on top. And to further embed them and blend them with the scenery, I used some smaller pebbles and a mixture of cat litter to help add some more shale, some more rock deposits, stuff that would just naturally won't be falling off this rock face. Speaking of the rock face, it was time to paint it. For this, I just used some earthy colors. I think this was Territorial Beige as the base coat, and then followed up with a lighter dry brushing of lighter and lighter browns, and then pushing it almost all the way to a off-white color, just for the most raised edges. Wanting to push the contrast even further and emphasize those shadows even more, I went back in with an airbrush with a darker brown color and then just mainly focused spraying it from the underside into those deepest recesses, again to help push that contrast just a little bit further and really make those shadows pop. One of the things that pushed me in the direction of going with a desert scheme was the fact that I picked up some of these Vallejo pigments, and I didn't really want to try dry brushing the ground or airbrushing the ground. And the pigments that I had on hand were all earthy, rusty kind of colors, which I figured would suit well for a desert. Now the two colors that I primarily used were dark red ochre and some natural sienna. And at first I was really just experimenting. As you can see, there's little splotches here and there, but what I really liked was the red ochre as a base color, and then dulled down or brought down just a little bit with that natural sienna over top of it. I don't know, it just felt like the kind of look that I was going for, so I went with it. I really liked the almost wastelandy kind of vibe I was getting from it, or at least some of that really dark red Utah kind of desert. To complement that dry desert theme, I really wanted to use some dead kind of grass, so I made up some tufts. This is actually Warworld Scenics 4mm grass. And the camera really doesn't do it justice, but this is actually 3 different colors of grass. It's their wild meadow, dead grass, and patchy grass. While I was in the mood for some vegetation, I then wanted to add some green to that tree. So I grabbed some of my fine leaf foliage and tried to pick out some of the smaller little pieces that don't have much use for other bigger projects and just glued them to that tree. I wanted to go for that patchy, kind of like dying tree, but still holding on to life look, and figured that a little bit of green would help stand out against that dry desert background. Now I hope you're not too fond of that little drone, because now it's time to put it through its paces and absolutely destroy it. I said absolutely destroy it. Come on, dude, it's just some plastic. Why are you fighting so hard? Whoa! After that friendly reminder as to why you probably should be wearing eye protection while cutting these things because they send shrapnel off like crazy, I then proceeded to cut the edges of the wings where they had been separated just to help show that it's been like torn apart, not just like cut with a pair of scissors. And then kind of just bent the other wing just to kind of show it was more intact and show the other wing absorbed most of the impact first. Luckily, there's no real right or wrong way to do this. It's kind of like up to your interpretation or how far you want to take it. Happy with the levels of destruction, I then went about painting the remaining pieces. For this, I chose an unfortunate color, which was too close to the original color of the plastic. I wanted to weather the drone using those pigments as well, so I used a black just to help kind of define some of those shapes and textures that aren't really easily seen, and glued it all in place. With the drone now in place, I moved on to painting the figure. I really like the paint scheme on the box art, so I kind of was inspired by that and made my own interpretation of it. So I started off by painting his jacket, a similar dark black grayish color. Don't ask me why you would wear dark black in a desert. Hopefully it's not summertime in this scene, but I don't know. He was actually a lot of fun painting, and I'm still trying to improve my figure painting skills. I'm pretty happy with how he came out. Unfortunately, I didn't like the way the face was molded. You really couldn't see the eyes very well, so I ended up not painting them. And once he was done, I glued him in place and used some of those pigments to help further blend him into the scene. And then I gave it a coat of black paint, and this one was good. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a long hiatus since my last one. I kind of took a little bit of a break that extended longer than I wanted it to, but you know, life comes in the way sometimes. But I've got no plans of quitting. Now that work's calmed down and no longer working overtime every single week, I have way more time to actually jump back into the hobby. So once again, thank you so much, especially if you made it this far, all the way to the very end. You guys are truly awesome. The next piece is almost done. Once again, it's going to be a submission for one of these friendly competitions. So I'm going to get working on that. I'll catch you guys in the next one.